And he went off to the University of Florida and he asked the professors, this was 1949, hey, I got to move to Florida. Where do you think is the fastest growing area of Florida? And what do you think is that thing that is the fastest growing? And they said Central Florida, Orlando. And they said building. So he sells his business. Why don't I start a building supply? My name is Bricklin. When we moved there, it was 100,000 people in Orlando, Florida. Give me a check that gives me $1 million after taxes and the stores are yours.
Jeff Stearns, connected through cars. If they're bigwigs, we'll have them on the show. And yes, we'll talk about cars and everything else. Here he is now, Jeff Stearns.
My dad had a building supply company called Bricklin Building Supply in Central Florida, and it was the biggest building supply in Central Florida. He was a furrier in Philadelphia when I was 10 years old. My father was a furrier in Philadelphia. That's why he was. 10 years old, he got sick. And the doctor said, you need warm weather. So they came to Florida, and we were in Daytona Beach, enjoying the beach. And he went off to the University of Florida and he asked the professors, this was 1949, hey, I got to move to Florida. Where do you think is the fastest growing area of Florida? And what do you think is that thing that is the fastest growing? And they said Central Florida, Orlando. And they said building. Now, he was a furrier. And he starts a little building supply in Central Florida, and it grew and it grew and it grew and it grew. Now, I'm in college. I'm in my second year of college. He decides he's selling. So he sells his business with a 1-year non-compete. And I'm in college. I'm there, and I don't know what I'm there for. I'm just there because it's a good time, and I happened to meet my first wife there. And I decided I better pay attention now. I got to go out. I just assumed I go to work for him or something. So I said, well, wait a second. Why don't I start a building supply? My name is Bricklin. I'll go hire his best salesman. And his name is Jack Cranis. And I named the company Cranis Bricklin. And I had set the curve in logic. So I logically determined I didn't need college anymore. So I quit college, got together with Jack, started my business. Now, the builders thought I was really my dad, or my dad was behind me. And the suppliers thought the same thing. So it wasn't like I wasn't taking advantage. It was 100% taking advantage. If I didn't have those advantages, I couldn't have done anything. My salesman sold everything. The suppliers sold it to me. The builders bought because they thought it couldn't have been better. And my dad honored his agreement for 1 year. Didn't have to do anything about telling me anything except introduce me to some people if I needed an introduction. So I'm now in the building supply business.
What year is this? What year, Malcolm, are we talking?
1958.
What was going on in Central Florida in 58? I mean, I live on the Clearwater side. So
building houses as fast as you can build them.
Okay. Now, so it wasn't like the Disney stuff.
No, it was way before Disney. It was before Disney, but they were building like crazy. Everywhere they were building. That's what was happening to Orlando. When we moved there, it was 100,000 people in Orlando, Florida.
Oh my God!
So you can imagine how fast it was building to where it's finally today. Anyhow, it was built. There was a problem with that. Everything was going good. I learned stuff I never thought I would learn in a million years. And I would notice a guy would go out and say he's going to build 100 houses. 90 houses, I got paid on time. The last 10, I didn't get paid. And you never knew when the last 10 was coming. I didn't like that at all. I said, I am never getting in a business where I'm giving somebody credit unless I'm a bank. That's just bad taste in my mouth to not trust the people you're doing business because it became part of the game. They built their houses, and in the last 10, they didn't pay anybody. They took their money and went to the next project, and you sold them because they were going to build another couple hundred, and it was only the end that was going to get screwed. You just didn't know where the end is. So I determined, not going to happen. I don't like this. At the same time, things were happening like 7-Eleven. They were open 7 to 11, 7 days a week. And instead of a big supermarket, they had a little supermarket. So they had a lot of little items, but they had very little backup inventory. And I'm sort of in the building supply business, but I also see the hardware. And I go into a hardware store, they got millions of items and they got inventory like you can't believe, which is a lot of money invested in inventory. So, I mean, a normal hardware store could have, at that time, had like $150,000 worth of stuff or more. I said, wait a second. how about if I build a cool little place that's open 9 to 9, 7 days a week? I call it Handyman. And I make the inside walls with the perforated things. I put everything up on there, but I only have enough stuff for a 2-day supply. So if I sell a box of nails in a day, I have 2 boxes. If I have 2 locks, I sell a week, I have 1 lock, and on and on. And then back it up with an IBM punch card. IBM had come out now with these punch cards. That was the new thing. And I put in a whole floor of these machines, and all it did is it took the cards and put them in an order that was in my warehouse and printed it out. That's what they did. But every store had a whole thing of cards. So every time they sold a hammer, they took a card out. My truck came around and picked up those cards for the day and dropped off yesterday's stuff. So they needed $10,000 worth of inventory instead of a couple $100,000 worth of inventory. And then I start franchising it. And it did really good. I was enjoying it. And we were building stores and I was franchising them out. And they used to be built up a couple in Connecticut and then a couple in LA. And then I met a man that owned Dixie Paint and Varnish Company in Georgia. And he wanted to sell me paint with the Handyman label, which I loved. And we did. And we sold a lot of paint. And he loved it. And he would fly in his airplane, not a jet. They didn't have jets then. Fly in his airplane and pick me up, and we'd go back to Georgia and have shrimp or some stunts. And then he'd fly me back there. And he was really happy. And one day he came to me and says, I'd like to turn your stores into more paint stores and less everything else. And I said, well, this is the formula that's working. I'm not changing it. I mean, I'll buy more if you want me to buy more, and we'll focus it more, but I'm not turning it into a paint store. So he said, how about if I buy you out? And I said, well, at the time I was about 20. And I'd made a statement to my world, I'm going to be a millionaire by the time I'm 21. So I said to him, give me a check that gives me $1 million after taxes and the stores are yours. And he did. Now he was a millionaire. And now I got to realize how money is the least amount of, in fact, maybe a drawback, because now I was afraid to do anything because I'd have to spend my money.
This has been Jeff Stearns, Connected Through Cars.